Hi, I'm Reverend Natalie Renee Perkins. My pronouns are her, she, like the chocolate, and I serve as executive minister for Hybrid Church at Middle Collegiate Church in the city of New York. I was hired at Middle in the fall of 2018 as a digital minister, and I got to play in the sandbox of building that for the church, um, which included like communion and we were already live streaming worship at that point, but um, how do we create spaces that were similar to what was already happening in the in-person space, but really intentional about the online people. So we used to have something called Chat and Chew in the social hall after church every Sunday, and I just built an online version of that. We still actually have a virtual Chat and Chew, and now the thing that happens in person is called something different. So the online space kind of commandeered that for itself. What else? We started Circle recently, which is kind of a private space for just the congregation to engage with each other in a platform. Also allows us to do all of our teaching from that space. So I am right now in the middle of a book read on Frederick Joseph's book, and we do all of those meetings inside of Circle and also create the curriculum inside of Circle, so they have somewhere to get like their course materials, um, and can answer things right in there. They can interact with pastors in real time, or other congregants in real time. What else? I don't know. I feel like there's a whole lot that I do. But I don't remember all the things. I think maybe just look up Diva Does Divinity or at Middle Church, and you will find the things that are there. I met my call to ministry in my wig cap and skivvies backstage. People were trying to find ways to have conversations, right, about God and Christianity and all the things, but and church, and they felt comfortable having those conversations with me. They didn't want to go to church anymore. They didn't want to go meet and find a pastor. And so we ended up having a lot of these conversations backstage before a show, or, creating Bible studies or and that kind of stuff. And I struggled while I was touring. I did the national tours of Hairspray and Rent. And while I was touring, it was hard to find somewhere to go to church. It was hard to get some sort of continuity in my spiritual growth. And my own church would almost forget. I live in New York, it's a very big city, so not intentional, but would almost forget that I was a member there. They'd remember, I was there, but I'd come back and they'd be like, "Oh, are you a member?" I'm like, "Yeah, I've been a member for like 5 years." But because I was gone, I was out of the city 9 months out of the year when I was performing pretty regularly. It was hard to just get some sort of continuity. And so I ended up at Life Church. I don't know if you all know Life Church. She's a special animal. This is when my theology was very different than it is right now. But what I could get from there was continuity, some consistency, right? They do series. So one Sunday I'd be in random U.S. city A at series, at the first series sermon. And then the next Sunday I'd be somewhere else and I'd get the next sermon in the series, and the third place the Sunday after that. And I'd get all four of them, but I will have been somewhere different. And I was able to learn, they all sing the same music, they all do the same whatever. So I was able to learn the same music. I was able to integrate into a worship there relatively easily because I knew the culture, knew what it was like. And I was like, well, what if there was something like this, but it was my church, that I didn't have to go somewhere else where I was, a speck of pepper and a sea of salt. And that was like my first call to digital ministry was, I know I can't be the only one who wishes that this was a thing. I know there are other people who travel for work. I know there are other people who can't leave their homes. How do they get to really engage in a spiritual community without having to actually be physically there? And televangelism is not the same, right? You're just looking at this thing. There's no one who's really communicating with you unless you want to send them some money. Then they'll give you a call and pray with you for the low price of $99 or something like that. So that's how I ended up in this space, because I really felt a love for how do we do this thing that is holy, right? Without the restriction of the physical walls. Yeah, fall of 2018. So I got a year and a half to build the container. So when the world shut down, people had somewhere to go, right? Middle grew 3 church loads as a result of that. In the beginning, it was very much whatever you want to do, like just do the thing. And it was really liberating, right? So I was like, okay, well, I get to reinvent communion every month if I want to. We started in the beginning with communion packets that we would mail out. And that's where we got started with the shots and dots. You know, the shots and dots, little cup of juice, and then like the little wafers on top. I call them shots and dots. And I would pack up like 13 of them. So they'd have one for each month. And then if they wanted to do one with a friend at some point, then they also had a little extra. Put together a little, you know, half sheet of paper with instructions on it, you know, and, you know, prayed over it and, you know, gave it to the USPS to take it from there. You know, and then we get into the shutdown, into COVID, and that's when we get like drive-by communion, and there's all these ways, all these different ways in which we're playing, and we realize it's not cost effective to continue to ship communion now to all of these, you know, thousands of people. So that's where we transitioned into, okay, well, what are you using for communion? What in this moment can you like turn from mundane into holy or sacred for yourself? And also gave us opportunities to do like a cookie communion, or like, let's bake Easter bread. Here's the recipe. Let's all like make our own sort of things that knit you together without being in the physical space. So people would send us pictures from their kitchens, right? Which felt very similar to the Brady Bunch choir, you know, moments. Like there's all these ways in which we actually can do community together. Oh yeah, so that's how it was different. That's how it was in the 2018ness of it all. And we kind of took off in that early space because I created it was around the 50th anniversary of Pride. I created a 50 years of Pride. It started 50 days before the end of the Pride month. So 10 days before Pride started, I started this Instagram campaign, and it was like when Instagram was doing campaigns like that. You could do like, and this was photos, like this was before video and reel really took off in that space, and mixed it with like super high celebrities. This is when, say his name, Billy Porter wore that beautiful like black gown. Like that was like the day one. And so that one went up viral because it had just hit. So 3 days later, it was on our Instagram page. And that's when you had the time and space to do something 3 days later. So that went viral, and then people were looking at our stuff. And so it was a mix between like celebrities and something they might say, and like our own people who I reached out to and asked them questions, and then like history around Pride. There were all of these different facets, I guess, that we brought into what this campaign could be. And I had someone at that time who was designing all of our graphics, and he and I sat down. I was like, okay, this is literally what it needs to look like. He was able to build the template, and then all I had to do is plug and play, and it really paid off for us. We got about 1 million eyes on that campaign throughout that month.
Wow.
Or 50 days. I think that digital ministry in some contexts has always been very strong, right? Conservative evangelical churches took it very seriously in the beginning. They called the online space their other campus. I had trouble, I think, in these more liberal and progressive spaces in it being taken seriously. It took me about 5 years to get ordained. But the minute the pandemic hit, that was March of 2020, I was ordained by December of 2020. So then it was like, oh, you have this thing. I know I was the only one ordained in New York City, specifically into digital ministry. And before that, I think there was one other person in the country that I know of that was ordained into digital ministry, but they had to have a dual call. So there had to be something else that they were doing besides digital ministry. And they asked me if I want to do that. I was like, I don't. Just this, And now, once that happened, then people were very much like, oh my gosh, can you please tell us what have you been doing? How do we do this? And now there's still some of that. I forget that there are still people who are at square one, even though we lived through a whole pandemic. My assumption often is, and I know it's incorrect, is you practiced in these years that we were all sheltered in place. And I'm still running into people who are like, I'm not entirely sure what to do. So there's, on this other side, all these years later, there's still a lot of how can I help you with what it is that you're doing, and make it a little more seamless for you if possible. Where are the ways that you can make this easier for yourself? It doesn't have to be a massive production, particularly if it's just you. You know, if you're the minister, like what else do you have around you? What other resources do you have around you to help make this a thing? I mean, the church has always evolved as technology evolves, right? My concern, what I will say around the impact for the future, my concern is that the church won't take the evolution of AI as seriously as we need to. And what will happen if we don't, right? Will we be swallowed up? Will we be forgotten? Will it mutate into something different than what it could be if the progressive voices were the loudest ones in the room? So my prayer is that the evolution is led by like the global majority, that the evolution is led by progressive voices, that we're able to create something that is life-giving and bold and assertive in the capturing of people, like the bringing in of people, rather than what feels like generally just leaving the front door opening and hoping somebody comes in. So how do we go out and, I hate the whole like fishers of men energy, but feels like that. You know what I mean? Like, and throwing, no, we're not doing all that. But like, how do we be that without being gross about it? I guess. I don't mean that in any sort of like, snarky way, but like, how do we do that part? Yeah. And I think if we're able to figure out the stickiness, the attractiveness of it, then we may be able to really help people let go of some stuff that's deadly.